Hi everyone, great to be back with you in 2021 and a big welcome to my guest today, Andrew Dinning, founder, managing director and CEO of Sarama Resources, which describes itself as a West African gold explorer and developer focused on establishing a new mining district in Burkina Faso. Andrew, thanks so much for joining me today. So I know there's
pleasure. Great to have the opportunity to speak.
Excellent. Andrew, I know you've got some exciting things to share with our audience, so let's jump straight into it. We are at the start of a new year, so tell me what has your attention today? And I know political risk has been a bit of a challenge and access to finance, so tell me about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a number of things on our agenda operating in West Africa, but I guess the things that have really kind of got our attention at the moment is looking at where the business is at and what we need to achieve this year. The company is busy preparing to IPO on the Australian Stock Exchange. It's fairly important for us. We're based in Perth in Australia. We always have been. I think the Australian market very much understands the African marketplace. And I think there's been a lot of success in that part of the world, with the likes of West African building the Samara project, which is an outstanding achievement given the events going on last year when they hit that milestone. I think the other thing too is just keeping an eye on geopolitics in West Africa. We obviously operate in the southwest of Burkina Faso. It's geopolitically it's a good place to be in the country. We don't see a lot of kind of problems in our area, but I think also what we've seen in Burkina, there's a big focus by the government and the international community to keep moving the country forward on the security side, and I think we've seen quite a lot of progress on that in the last year or so. And I think the fact that Orezone Gold have just got approval for debt for the Bomboro project to the tune of around 200 million US, I think is pretty positive for the country. So yeah, for us, it's continuing the reset that we started in the middle of last year, and pushing the company ahead, improving the balance sheet and getting on with a big drill program that we've got planned.
Brilliant, Andrew, and I look forward to seeing those developments as we track through the year. I know, we don't really want to harp on too much about COVID-19, but we can't ignore it either. So Andrew, tell me, was Sarama or any of its operations impacted by COVID-19 last year? And how would you mitigate against any further risks this year if it continues?
Yeah, look, I think most businesses have been impacted, by COVID-19 in one way, shape or form. I mean, it kind of impacts us in a couple of areas. One's on the corporate side, obviously being Perth-based but listed in Canada makes it very difficult to, service the equity markets where we're listed, meet with brokers and analysts and shareholders. So, part of the rationale for listing on the ASX, apart from we think that's an exchange that perhaps understands African risk a little better than Canada, is to be able to actually, access our shareholder register and keep the story out there, which has been difficult in the last 12 months. And from an operational point of view, obviously, we're impacted here in Perth. Australia's fairly strict travel conditions. We're fortunate in Burkina that our guys on the ground there that run things are either Burkina Bay or the Canadians. So the Canadians are a bit more free to move than us. So I think logistically, travel's a challenge. In country, it's important, with our local employees that we have the respective COVID protocols in place. When expats are coming in from outside the country, we obviously observe the local quarantine protocols. But I think the other thing for us, and I think for other companies as well, is that we need to be very cognizant of the communities, the local communities where we operate in regional Burkina Faso. So we have, certain protocols in place to ensure that, we reduce the minimisation, potential for COVID to get transferred via our employees. So we're very much aware of that. But I think, as far as West Africa goes, COVID's an issue, but I think there's plenty of other health issues that need to be dealt with as well. Whether it's malaria or other types of disease. But I think for us, we're very aware of the impact we have on local communities and the need to make sure we manage our business so that it doesn't impact them.
Excellent, Andrew, and thanks for pointing out, it's only one of many things that you do have to contend with in the country. But let's talk about your operations a little bit more. You have 2 gold projects that you are working on in the country. So don't you want to update me as to how those are tracking at the moment?
Yeah, we do have 2. One's an advanced, it's almost pre-development project. It sits in the southern part of the Hyundai belt, which is probably the most prolific belt in Burkina, and I think one of the best in West Africa. We've seen a lot of corporate activity there in the last 12 to 18 months. So you've seen first Endeavour take over Semifo to get hold of the Mana mine, and then you saw them take over Teranga as well. Teranga border us to the north, so that's now Endeavour, and Endeavour Semifo bordered us to the west, and that's now Endeavour as well. So really the 2 main players in the southern part of the belt is us and Endeavour, and as you move a bit north, you have Rox Gold in there as well. So I think for us, from a project point of view, we're pretty keen to get that project moving. We've advanced that right up the curve now. We did a resource update on it the 3rd quarter of last year. So we've moved that project up to around 2.5 million ounces total, around 850,000 ounces of oxide. So the aim this year is to grow the oxides out through 1 million ounces and get the project through 3 million. So once we've done that, we'll start feasibility work. So that's the aim for this year. Once we complete the IPO, we've got about 80,000 metres of drilling planned across various targets, and that'll range from infill and extensional work to hitting new targets we've identified in the last 12 months. So that's the main project. Our second project, Kumandara, sits in the Banfora belt, about 80 kilometres to the west. That's an early stage project, but we like that. We see a lot of geological analogues there to what we see in the Hyundai belt. It's very unexplored. We've got around 600 square kilometres there, so it's quite a big project. The biggest gold anomaly we've got is about 40 kilometres long and 3 to 5 kilometres wide. So it's early stage, but we've built that one in the background over the years. We don't promote it much because we've been focusing on our stuff in the Hyundai belt.
Thanks, Andrew. And, while we're talking about your operations, let's talk about what some may consider a little bit of a touchy subject, and that's the issue of terrorism, which Burkina Faso has really been under the spotlight for, in the last year or 2. So don't you want to give me your feedback or give me your thoughts on terrorism in Burkina Faso?
Yeah, look, I think it's a question you can't avoid. I think it's one of the things when people are looking at Burkina, or in that matter, West Africa, it's important to understand the granularity of the security situation in that part of the world. There's multiple drivers behind the terrorism, and a lot of it's economic. So I think what we've seen in Burkina in probably the last 2 years, there's been some pretty bad events, but I think one of the things that has done is focus the government and the international community on trying to combat the extremists. So I think what we've seen in the last 12 months is, I guess, a bit of pushback, kind of, I think, more overtly in some areas, but I think a lot happening in the background against terrorists. We're seeing the incidents kind of seem to be moving more to the north and the frequency declining. It's quite a big subject to talk about, but for us, operating in the southwest of the country, from a geopolitical point of view, is, I guess, a better place to be. Semifo obviously had a fairly tragic incident there in late 2019. And to put that in context, that's the same distance from that incident to Lagos as it is from where we operate. So I think people need to understand the granularity, but also the size of the area that you're talking about. I think kind of outside that, from a security point of view, the incidents that you see are no different to what you see elsewhere in West Africa or Africa in general, for that matter, with trying to general banditry and that. But I think if there's one thing I was going to, if people did ask a question on it and we're interested, is really to properly inform yourself with, balanced and good information and data. I think the fact that Orezone has just financed their Bombore project, and that's debt financed, so I think that's a pretty important development for obviously Orezone, and well done to those guys because it's been a journey. But I think it's also an important development for the country. And also I think West Africans, construction of Samara last year in what was supposedly a difficult year, or it was a difficult year with COVID, but pre that security or insecurity issues, they got that financed and built as well ahead of time and under budget. So I think it's a big problem for the local population. It's a problem politically. I think if you manage accordingly and are cognizant of your environment, that you can get on with business. And it's important that you maintain, obviously good relations with your local community and with the government, because that's really your two best forms of defence against anything untoward happening.
Very valid points raised there, Andrew. So thank you. And thank you for that context about really understanding, the size of the region and how we're moving between places. So Andrew, we're almost out of time, but I'd like to end by asking you for your key takeaway message that you would give to any other junior mining companies that would be looking to develop a project in Burkina Faso. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think, probably the key message is if you're looking to develop a project in Burkina Faso, or I'd say anywhere really, and it's not just continental Africa, but I think you need to be mindful of the local politics. I think you need to, where you work, you need to be respectful of and bring the local community with you. I think that's absolutely paramount. And I think you shouldn't be tempted into taking shortcuts, whether it's making promises that can never be met or other things that you may get pressured on. There is a lot of pressure points when you're a junior, particularly when you don't have cash flow. But I think the most important thing to do is, manage people's expectations, make sure they understand where your business is at, and be aware that, you're a guest of the local communities where you work, and you're there at their, as a guest. So I think, if there's anything you want to take away, it's probably those things: is you got a social license, don't abuse it.
Excellent, Andrew. Excellent key takeaways there for your peers. So thank you so much for your time, and really it's been great chatting to you. I really look forward to that IPO that's coming up, and watching what you do with your projects, taking them forward this year. So thank you, Andrew, so much for your time and for joining me today.
No worries. Thanks for the opportunity to share our story.